What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode 213 of the Creative Rise podcast.
Hey
So glad you're here
guys.
today. I'm Joey. This is Christy. If you are new to the show today, we have been doing this podcast since 2020. Creative Rise started in 2019 with one goal: to help you get paid to do what you love. So I've got a content agency background. She's got a wedding photography and brand photography background. And we collectively gather what we learn in our own businesses and what we learn from a lot of other people, like today's episode, which is a guest episode, and we share it with you every single week. So welcome to the podcast. We're so glad you're here. If you're new, if you're not new, welcome back. Each week we drop an episode to help you get paid to do what you love, which is awesome. So that's what today's podcast is gonna try and aim to do. And our guest today is awesome.
Our
Super
guest
excited.
is unreal. We actually asked this guest to come on because we actually really use the software that he built. We have James Broadbent on today. He is the founder and CEO of Narrative. He's also a photographer at Chasewild Photography, which he co-founded. It's an internationally renowned wedding company. So James also founded Narrative basically on the side while doing that, which is unbelievable. Started Narrative to empower photographers to unleash their creative potential by making software that they actually love, which we always joke because we're like,
Which we
don't
love it.
love Lightroom, we don't love Photoshop, but do I love Narrative? Yes, absolutely. So
And we have for
James.
years, yeah.
Narrative's tools employ AI to assist photographers in the culling and editing process, which saves them hours in the post-production workflow. I know it does for me. And today, Narrative actually processes billions, yes, with a B, billions of images annually for photographers across over 160 different countries, which is incredible.
So James has been building Narrative for a long time now, for a few years. You're going to hear more about that, but you're also going to hear a lot about his story of building Chasewild, to the point where he was getting 1,000 inquiries for weddings every single year, which is insane. And this is all around the world. So
Destination.
yeah, this episode is going to give a lot of context on what it looks like to build a really, really strong wedding business. And it's also going to talk a lot about the future of where he sees trends in photography going and how we can use AI to actually be a part of that future. One of the things he talks about is, if you're not a part of what's moving on, what's moving kind of the AI space as it pertains to us in the creative space, if you're not getting into that, you might miss the boat on a few things, and you might not be a part of the future of the creative world, which I fully believe in as well. So we're going to talk a lot about that and the misconceptions with it, and is it taking over, is it not, and all that stuff. So really excited for this episode. But the best part about this episode is going to be at the end, because at the end of this episode, James and his team at Narrative have actually said they want to give everyone who listens to the Creative Rise podcast a special discount code to sign up and get 15% off of Narrative, which is really cool. So listen all the way through the end, and you're going to get the code there for the Narrative discount, which is awesome. Again, Christy and I have been actually using Narrative for years and continue to use it. It saves us so much time, like 6 to 7 hours probably per wedding when we used to shoot tons of weddings. It's a lot of time. It's really helpful in the brand space as well for shooting campaigns. But additionally, if you are new to Creative Rise, or if you've been listening to the last couple weeks of the episodes, we've been talking about a brand new course we just launched called the Sales Call Formula course, giving you the 7 steps to actually get your next effective yes on a sales call. Sales calls are really difficult, and unless you understand the formula on how to execute one well, it can feel awkward and slimy and weird. And so we've eliminated that. We just came out with this new course called the Sales Call Formula. The best part is it's $47 right now, but it's free for everybody who's currently getting on the next round of the Masterminds, round 13's waitlist, which creativerise.com, you'll see join the waitlist buttons everywhere. If you're new to Creative Rise,
jump on it.
Yes, free waitlist is just getting on the waitlist to hear about all the info and what's coming up and the dates and everything for round 13 of the next flagship. Is what we do since the last 5 years, our flagship 6-week mastermind. So if you jump on that, you can get the course for free. You're also going to get a bunch of info about the mastermind, and if it's for you, if it's not, and what you can expect. But anyways, if you're struggling with sales calls, that might be a good step for you today after the podcast. But until then, this is a great episode with James. So shout out to James. James, thanks for being on the pod, man. It's such a fun conversation. Listen all the way through, guys, not only for the Narrative discount, but it just keeps getting better and better and better. There's so much value in this. So here's James.
All right, James, thanks for being here on the Creative Rise podcast. We're so happy to have you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome. I'm really excited to chat to you guys today.
Oh, we are so excited. And we were just talking about this. We're like, Kiwis are our favorite people. Like, if you're not a Kiwi, you're not on top 10 of our favorite people.
Shout out to all the Kiwis that listen to the pod, actually. We, one of our largest cities in terms of geographic locations is Auckland. So
That's
there
true.
you go.
Our listeners. So
Shout out to all the people in
Wow.
Auckland, as you are from Auckland.
Wow.
Very cool. Well, dude, rapid fire questions. We always just rip through them real quick. Give us name, businesses you either previously have done or you're currently operating in, and then obviously location. You're in New Zealand.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so I have a wedding photography brand called Chasewild, which is all about sort of destination weddings and adventurous elopements, which I started a long time ago with a friend of mine. And I'm also the founder and CEO of Narrative, which you might be familiar with. We build AI-assisted culling, editing, and tools for publishing your blogs.
I literally use it every single week.
Yeah, which Christy and I have been using. It feels like
Forever.
for a long time. Like you
Forever.
guys started Narrative. You said what, like 5-6 years ago ish, somewhere around there. I feel like we've been using it for.
Like I've been using it for longer
I
than
thought we
that.
were using it for like 7 years. So,
Yeah, maybe.
but we love Narrative. So can't wait to
Yeah.
chat about both Chasewild and Narrative on the podcast today.
Yes.
Give us a little bit. Give us your business superpower. Like, what's something you're great at in business that people can expect to kind of tune in for throughout the rest of this pod?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, when we used to run a lot of workshops, one of the things I would say often to people is, the reason why Chasewild became successful wasn't because we were good photographers. I think we were like okay at photography. It's because we were good at business. And, it's so interesting. Often photographers enter the industry of photography because they sort of feel like they're an artist, they're a creative. And in some ways, business and art often feel like they somehow oppose each other and you're kind of like good at one or the other. And so building Chasewild into a business which really like served us and ultimately, grew to a point where we were getting like 1,000 inquiries a year and picking
That's awesome.
20 that we wanted to shoot.
Yeah.
Was really all about kind of, building the brand, finding ways to create leads, convert those leads, and continue to sort of like, I guess, increase the perceived value of the work that we were creating.
I love that. Honestly, you're preaching to the choir with that one. Like the creative side obviously is important. It's like what we love to do. It's oftentimes why we got started. But I think, what keeps you in business is the business side. And so I'm so excited to just like dig all into that. And 1,000 inquiries a year, that's amazing. And I feel like so many, especially wedding photographers are listening going, frick, how did they do that? Tell me right now. Like they just want to skip forward to that part.
The big how question.
But so you've built incredible businesses. You've built Chasewild, which is obviously has so much success in the wedding space. You've started Narrative, which is like an incredible company. What about James was a flop? Like what was
let's
like an
humanize you for a second
embarrassing
before we
moment?
get into everything.
Like whether it's at the wedding or Narrative, whatever you want to pick, what's a flop you've had just so that you can look human to everybody and to us, to be honest. What's a flop you've had?
I actually have one that, like quite recently, and
Yes.
it's so recent that like I'm not sure if I should tell it, but I'm sure that they're not listening. So I shot a wedding recently, and Narrative is my full-time focus now. So I've got a whole team of data scientists and engineers and marketers and whatnot, and so I'm 9 to 5 working on that, and I still shoot weddings because I love doing it and I want to keep a finger on the pulse. And it's really important to what we're creating is also using the product as well. And I was shooting this wedding down in Queenstown. I let my team like take the cameras away on the weekends and stuff like that. And I've always been really good at making sure that my batteries are always charged. But I guess other people maybe not quite so much. And so, the night before the wedding, a bunch of things happened, and I was running around like a madman. Didn't get to charge batteries. When I went to bed, I was like, must charge batteries. I'm pretty sure a lot of them are going to be dead. Got 2 charged, woke up, and was like, I pretty much just had to like run out the door. I was like, I charged some when I get to Queenstown. Didn't get a chance because like the flight was delayed. Everything got pushed back. Tried to charge them a little bit while the bride was getting ready, and there wasn't enough. And then we got to the ceremony and, well, we being me, I was looking at my cameras and one was like low battery and the other one was like 1 bar. And I quickly went through all of the other batteries in my bag and they were all completely dead, like 100% dead. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is actually going to be one of those stories which gets published in a newspaper about a photographer who turned up to a photo shoot and their batteries were dead. And directly after the ceremony, the helicopter was flying in and we were going to fly on top of a mountain. So I'm going from like ceremony almost being out to straight in the helicopter to fly on top of a mountain to do the photo shoot. And I had like this, I was like, oh my God. Well, and the ceremony was not like in a building or something like that. And then
Oh my gosh.
the bride pulls up in this like, you know, there's some hired vehicle. And I was like, I just like, I don't know how I'm going to solve this problem. The only way I can solve this is I need to find a person who can help me solve it because I need to shoot the ceremony. And I don't have time to like get in the car and like drive somewhere and find somewhere to charge them. And so as the bride turned up, she was like, I just need a little minute to freshen up. And
take your time. Take your time.
Yeah. Well, I said to the driver, I was like, I really, really, really need a hand right now. And he sorted it for me and made sure that by the ceremony I had batteries that were charged, which was enough to get us through the helicopter photo shoot.
Oh.
And then by the time I came back, I was able to charge them. And so, yeah, there was no issue in the end. Everything was perfectly fine. We solved it.
Shout out to the driver.
I know. And I was talking to a friend recently who was a photographer in landscape photographer, and she was like, I've tried weddings a few times, but like I don't know if it's for me. And I was like explaining to her, I think a big part of being a wedding photographer is being a problem solver because there's just constantly like things across the day. You know, you're kind of the pseudo wedding planner, and your job is just to make sure that like everything is working, because when things are working, you get what you want, and you kind of like plan everything. You've got redundancy plan for everything. You're not turning up with 2 batteries, you're turning up with 8 and they're all fully charged. And, you know, like it's so, that was a first and hopefully a last.
Oh my gosh. I just imagine if it were me and like my battery's dead during the ceremony, I'm still pretending like I'm taking photos.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Like I'd be there just like clicking a shutter that's not even going, just like smile and wave, boys.
The only thing that could be worse than that is actually what I did on one of the weddings I shot, where I got a text from the bride at like, I don't know, 11 a.m. in the morning. And she's like, hey, you never showed up to, shoot me getting ready. And I was 3.5 hours away from where she was, because the wedding in my calendar was actually the next day, as it was on the contract, and I had kind of screwed up. It was a whole thing. It was super embarrassing. Anyways, I got there literally as she was walking down the aisle. I walked in the door as she was walking down the aisle. It was so embarrassing.
It's just a good thing that
that's the only thing worse than not having batteries is like just actually missing the whole thing. But I totally agree with you, though.
I appreciate the recent flop. I feel like people usually go back like a few years. I appreciate the recent flop, James. Thank you. No,
that's quality, man. We appreciate that.
I mean, you have all these different things that you have in place to make sure that you execute perfectly. And kind of when you step away from it a little bit, I definitely have to remind myself, like, you know, what is the process I have to make sure that, like, I don't know, everything happens and like I never miss anything. And so, it is, doing it not full time is different.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, dude, let's get into the story. So give us a chronological quick snapshot on your last decade of starting Chasewild. Then at some point narrative entered the picture. Give us just like a year by year. I know it's hard to kind of think back specifics in each year, but just a quick snapshot of like, where did James start? How'd you get to where you are now?
Yeah. So after I finished studying, I did this trip where I traveled from India to Europe overland, and it took me like 6 months, and I traveled all the way through like India, Nepal, Pakistan, Iran, Iraq, into Turkey and Europe and so forth. And before I left, I had bought a camera, and it was just my goal to document it. And I started a Tumblr because that's where photographers hung out then.
Yes.
And I shot the trip, and there's actually quite a good story about this as well. A friend of mine was a photographer, and I was like, what kind of lens should I buy? And he was like, oh, my favorite lens is the 50L, which for people who don't know is a fixed 50 millimeter lens. And so I bought that for the trip, and I kind of got to I was like standing in these like markets in India, and I was like, well, this lens is not the right lens for this situation, but it was all I had.
Close up.
Yeah, for 6 months. And I think it's actually quite an important part of my story of becoming a photographer, because it really taught me to move my feet and find my composition and find the frame of what I was trying to shoot. And so I had to be like, well, how do I capture this with this not very wide angle? And I think I got really good at that. It was like, finding a frame which really tells a story in terms of what I'm trying to capture. And it turns out that that's my favorite focal length now. I love 50. It's like such a beautiful, natural focal length where you can kind of like get some context, but also shoot like beautiful portraits and whatnot. And I returned from that trip after sort of like creating that blog and building a bit of a following, and a friend was like, you want to shoot my wedding? And I was like, yeah, I've got no work, so sweet, sounds good.
Absolutely.
Shot the wedding, and I was like, whoa, like actually maybe I could do wedding photography. It turned out pretty well. And so pretty much like the day after I shot the wedding, I decided I was going to be a wedding photographer. I moved home, didn't have a job, moved back into my parents' house and started building a website and started building a portfolio. And so I kind of joked that the day I shot my first wedding was the day I became a full-time wedding photographer, because I didn't have any other work. And then managed to get like another book. It was summer here in New Zealand. Managed to get like 2 or 3 more bookings within the summer. The 6th wedding I shot, which was only months later, ended up getting published in a magazine here in New Zealand called Magnolia Rouge. And it kind of like steamrolled from there. And so from that June to the following June, I shot 40 weddings.
Wow.
And it was like, I always feel funny telling the story to people who have a different story, because this is unusual. Like, I don't want people to listen to this and be like, well, I didn't get that, so I'm not going to be successful. But I really, really, really hustled to get bookings during that time and shot a lot. And then at the same time, a good friend of mine, Cam, was entering the wedding industry, and we were shooting a lot together. So actually, not only did I shoot that 40, but we were helping each other shoot. So we think that we probably shot like 60 weddings in that year. Between like some weekends we'd be doing like, I'd be doing one and he'd be doing one, and we'd shoot them back to back or something like that. And we loved what we loved about being a wedding photographer was, being out shooting with our couples, creating amazing work. And I think what we didn't love was all of the stuff behind the scenes, building the business, building the brand, running social media, responding to the emails. And so we were like, well, what if we just combined and built one brand, and then we would only have to do half as much of that. And rather than shooting together, let's build a brand which enables us to shoot separately. And which I'm not sure, it's not super common, but it absolutely worked for us. And so we chose a name that was independent of our names, and we by that point knew and understood that we loved taking people out into the mountains in New Zealand and shooting incredible locations, and wanted to shoot destination weddings around the world. And so we built this brand called Chasewild, and it did sort of take us everywhere. I think I've shot weddings in like 13 different countries now. My mum lived in Europe for a lot of that time, and so in New Zealand winters, New Zealand summers are opposite to the Northern Hemisphere, and so there's like amazing opportunity where in our winter I would fly up to Europe for like 2 or 3 months and kind of like base myself out of there, and then just bounce around and shoot weddings in like, France, Italy, Morocco, wherever. Kind of funny story, but we loved the Faroe Islands and we had a booking there, and so we did a little bit of SEO work on there, and we for some time #1 on Google for Faroe Island wedding photographer. And so
Just about the furthest you could possibly be, from like Auckland to the Faroe Islands. Yeah.
Oh, that's incredible.
I love
so
that.
ended up shooting their heats, and to the point where I would like fly in and like go to the hotel, order a pizza, get up the next day, shoot, and then fly out the day after. And I was like,
you're like, do I
this
need to
is
move
dumb.
to Faroe Islands?
Yeah. Just like one of the most premier, like epic,
Yes.
one of the harder places to get to in the world. And you're like, all right, fly in, get the pizza, shoot, get out of here.
Get out of here.
So used to it now.
amazing.
Yeah. Wow.
And it was about that time that, I mean, obviously sort of optimizing our workflow was a big part of creating the successful business and finding ways to focus on the things which are important in terms of developing the business. And so I spent a lot of time thinking like, you know, how could this be more efficient? And it was kind of interesting because the first product that we built was our blogging tool, which makes it really easy to build long-form photo blog posts. If you're in like Squarespace, Wix, or WordPress, and you get more than like 20 images in a blog, it's just a bit of a headache. And so it used to take me like a day to build a blog or, you know, a narrative to tell the story of this photo shoot, which I was trying to communicate. And I was like, this must be easier. And so I emailed a whole bunch of the different photography software companies, and I was like, we need this product. Like, you should build this for us. I guarantee thousands of people will want it. And loads of people responded, and they were like, this is an amazing idea, but we're really busy right now. And that was sort of an unlock moment for me where I was like, oh, wow, okay, so just because the idea exists doesn't necessarily mean that there are people working on it. And everyone's kind of got their own shit going on.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, maybe I should build it. And not like literally become a software engineer, but like start a company that does. And I never knew anything about building software, but I was quite technical. And I contracted someone to build the blogging tool. I was like, if we sell it to like 500 people, I'll make the initial like expense back, and then the rest of it will be like opportunity to grow revenue and like market it and whatnot. And like 500 people signed up in the first week, and I was like, whoa, okay.
Yeah, we're on to something.
Point, I was like, okay, maybe I should focus on this a little bit more. And so after Publish, we built Select, which is our AI-assisted culling tool, which is really focused around this problem of enabling you to find your best images from a photo shoot. And it doesn't do the selection for you. It helps you find the images faster. And people say that they can cull a photo shoot in like anywhere between like 30 to 50% of the time that they used to. And ultimately just take away like that big pain point of culling. And like you guys were saying, you've been using it for a long time.
In Lightroom.
Yeah, the load times. Well, the thing that I love about Select is that it makes it so much. It's not only just shorter, it's also an easier process because you're retraining your eyes to look for the colors. That Select enables you to help, like, you know, like it starts teaching your brain like certain colors or certain things in terms of focal points and stuff being in focus, out of, you know, and it's like, not only is this just shorter time, it's actually like such a better experience. It's almost like this is a very abstract example, but we have a Tesla, and it's like my favorite thing about the Tesla is not that it's a faster car, but it's when we're driving, it might take us the same amount of distance to go somewhere, but it's so much more enjoyable because put the thing on autopilot and you're relaxing, you know? It's like, it's not just about the time you're saving. It's like, what's the experience in the time saved? And that's what I love about narrative. So both of us.
That's so cool to hear. We talk about our purpose is to unlock the photographer's creative potential.
Yeah.
And really like the thing which stops people from doing that is they don't love the software that they use. And so if the software is a hindrance to you creating your best work, that's a problem. And that's ultimately the problem that we're trying to solve. And so after Select, we launched Edit, which is a tool which learns your editing style through feeding it a database of images that you previously edited. And then when you arrive in Lightroom, all of those images will be pre-edited in the way that you would. And so you'll see all of the parameter adjustments adjusted for you, and you can make more adjustments after you've imported it. And all of those adjustments will each individually help improve the AI.
Yeah.
So
So
cool.
cool, man.
So
So
what's it?
from like 2014,
Yeah.
15-ish, Chasewild starts all the way through now. I mean, obviously Narrative's globally known. It's a great product
Yeah.
for all creatives all over the place. And this is what's cool about it. Just before we get in, I want to talk more Chasewild stuff, but the coolest part about Narrative, it's not just a wedding tool. It's primarily, I'm sure a lot of people would be in the wedding space, but as brand photographers as well, we love
my
it,
gosh.
which
It's
is
like
cool. And I think it saves a lot of time.
the
So
only other software I use.
yeah. So let's jump back to Chasewild. So you build this wedding photography business that is at the run rate of getting 1,000 inquiries a year, which is a ton of inquiries.
Yeah.
What are the two things, if you can, really track it down to two things, what do you think are two things that really allowed Chasewild to get to that point where you had such a massive lead flow? Because everyone listening to this podcast would go,
Yeah.
I would die, I would kill, for leads like that. And obviously there's been a lot of shifting in the world since probably when you started Chasewild to now in the wedding space. But what are some things that you think actually enabled Chasewild to get to 1,000 inquiries a day, or 1,000 inquiries a year?
Yeah. It's probably not two things. it's like a lot of things, but I can talk
Go for
about
it.
probably
As
what
many
the
as you
two
want.
most sort of like influential things were. And I think it's important to sort of just start with recognizing that so many inquiries come through your previous clients. And so doing an amazing job for your clients and not just delivering great work, but really making them love you as a person is super important. And so people will look at the images and they're going to love them as their wedding, and especially if you shoot nice images. But the relationship that you build with them sort of like leading up to the wedding and during the wedding will have a pretty significant influence about how they feel about the images when they receive them as well, because they're like they're
Very
not just
true.
like the photos from the wedding photographer, they're like the photos from like James, and James is this person who we really like trust and respect, and so they sort of it's amazing how it changes, I guess, the emotional connection that they have with their images. And so your previous clients are your biggest champions and make them love you. And the people who get married generally have friends who are getting married, and they'll share the photos across their social media. And like, if they're championing you, then it will be a huge lead generation for you. Like, you could build a business without a website, probably, if you just, I mean, maybe not from the outset, but like, you could drive all of your leads that way if you wanted to.
Yeah.
We also spend a lot of time, well, maybe not even a lot of time, but SEO was a focus for us, and we saw sort of an opportunity where everyone was building SEO focused on like one term, like Auckland wedding photographer. And we knew that prior to couples planning weddings, they weren't just searching terms like that. They were thinking about like venues, and they were thinking about inspiration. They were thinking about, I don't know, like what dresses they were going to wear. It's like a lot, they're kind of just perusing. And during that process, you kind of want them to encounter your work as many times as possible. And this was actually a big part in terms of why creating blogs would take so long, because every single blog post that we created, we would focus it around different keywords that we sort of thought that people might be searching whilst planning a wedding. And so a good example of a blog that used to get hit all the time was this wedding which we'd shot in this, what'd you call it? It's like, it was an older building that was kind of like converted into a wedding space. And we're like, what would people sort of be searching for in warehouse wedding? And so we built this whole blog around this term of warehouse wedding, New Zealand or Auckland. And it was a massive driver of inquiries. And I think the thing about SEO is that people think that you need to go for the term, like the most search term, which in my case here in Auckland would be Auckland wedding photographer. But everyone's trying to build SEO for that term.
Yeah.
And for you to become competitive in that, especially if you're starting out, you're just not. Like, it's going to take you years. You need like so many backlinks. You need to build your SEO authority over a really long time. But going after less frequently searched terms is significantly easier. And so even just making sure that we had like blogs covering all of the different kinds of like venues and styles of weddings and as much as we could ultimately. And that was a big driver for us, and it still is. And
Amazing.
A lot of the inquiries we were getting were actually like people coming in from overseas as well. And the main way that they were finding photographers was Google. And then the last thing that we did a lot of was for every single wedding that we were proud of, we would submit it to as many blogs, websites, magazines, and everything that we possibly could. And it just sort of resulted in our work circulating. There was one point where I think there was 6 consecutive issues of Together Journal we were published inside that magazine, and ultimately built a really good relationship with Greta, who runs that. And she would come to us and be like, do you have any more like cool weddings? And so building those relationships was really valuable. And this is a really tried and tested method in terms of getting your work out there more, but just getting it in the hands of everyone who was involved in the wedding as well. And so that's like your florist, your makeup artist, your wedding planner, the venue, and then giving them really clear, distinctive instructions about how they can and can't use the photos. And so you are doing this because it is going to drive awareness of your work. And so for it to drive awareness of your work, what do you need for them to do that? Well, if it's on a website, it needs to be connected to a backlink to a website. If it's published on social media, it needs to have your Instagram tagged, and like you can't change the edit on it. Like people would upload it to Instagram and put something else on, and if you're posting it, in this place, then, and just give them really clear instructions. And so, there's a few of some of the things that we would do.
There's so much value in each one of those pieces, and it's like the little building blocks in each area. It does add up, like it really does. And I think that awareness of also even just the tried and true, like if you're trying to go where everybody else is like jockeying for a position, it tends to just not work out in your favor if you're just getting started. So it's like looking for those new opportunities or looking for those more untapped areas, or whether it's on socials, whether it's SEO, whether it's who you're trying to work with in your town. Like if you're just trying to always do what everybody else is exactly doing in like the main market, like finding those little back alleys is such a great way to get your name known and put out there.
Yeah, I love, my favorite thing you said, James, was you were talking about how can I get my work / our name in front of a bride as many times as possible before she might even be looking for a photographer, right? In all the other places she's looking, whether it's looking for a dress, looking at venues. We have an analogy here at Creative Rise we talk about all the time, where it's like all of your clients already exist. You don't have to wait for them to be born. Like your clients exist. They're just on a highway somewhere where you don't have road signs. You're not advertising there, right? So it's like, if the flow of the highway is going, we want to create as many off-ramps to potentially people being able to get off the highway and come visit what we're doing and experience it. And so it sounds like you just mastered that and going, how do we just put our name, put our brand, put our images in front of every single place possible that a bride is going to be consuming, whether it's directly about looking for a photographer or not. I think that's brilliant. And that's advice that is, whether you were doing that in 2014, it was popping you off, that has not changed. That will never change.
It's still relevant, right?
Yeah, it's super relevant.
We built Publish to assist in this so that people could do it more easily, and Publish his whole SEO feedback process, where, because there's traffic light system, and it sort of asks you like, what do you want to sort of focus on as your keywords, and then it gives you feedback, because people go to Google image search all the time as well, and so you want to make sure every single photo has alt text associated with it. And so every single photo is an opportunity to rank in Google for a different term. And so we would go through, and this is why publish became really important, because without publish, you have to like change the alt text and change the file name on every single photo, and it's like really slow. But narrative publish does that for you. And so you just click on each image and you can just sort of like, you look at the photo and you're like, oh, what would this be relevant to someone searching? And it's like, it could be like forest wedding photo shoot. And then you're like, oh, then the next image is nearly exactly the same. What could we do with this one? Like pine forest, like you just keep coming up with like
redwood.
Slightly different variations for every single image, because someone is probably going to search a term like that. And your image is going to show in Google, and if it is kind of what they're sort of envisioning, then they're probably going to end up on your website. And as we were saying, it's like the more touch points that you can have, because Brian and Grim, it's not like they just jump on Google once and bang off a bunch of inquiries and then make a decision. They're perusing for weeks, sort of thinking about this. Wedding photography is quite a big decision, and so. Yeah, as many kind of touch points that you can create is going to sort of build the confidence and the conviction. And the process of ultimately choosing a wedding photographer, I think for many people is very emotional as well. It's not very logical. And so you're ultimately trying to like make them fall in love with what you create to the point where they feel like, I can't not have this, which totally happens. And
absolutely,
it's really not, for most people, it's not a logical decision. It's just like, I need my wedding to be shot by this person because the way that this is communicated and captured is exactly kind of how I want. So
that's amazing. That's cool.
Love that.
What do you feel like is a myth that a lot of wedding photographers or videographers out there believe that will help them grow their business, and maybe you see a trend or you see what they're doing and you're like, stop, that's not going to help you. Like, what's something that you think people put too much stock in or that isn't true that might be inhibiting their growth?
Yeah. So I think that the thing which I would hear photographers say again and again, particularly when we were running workshops, was I need to become a better photographer and then I will get more bookings. And this was also validated by the workshops that we would run as well. We would have workshops that were titled or focused around, basically like improve your shooting skills. And we would have ones that were focused around improve your photography business. And the ones focused around like becoming a better photographer would get booked at about 10 times
100%.
the rate of the business ones. And it's really interesting because people who were coming through the Improve Your Photography Skill workshop were amazing photographers. And the time that they were spending and investing in trying to like often they'd be like, I need to get a better camera. I need to, become a better editor, like all these kinds of things. Yeah, it's like your work was probably already at more than a sufficient quality for you to like get a season of bookings. And if it's not, then just go away and do some styled shoots, like sit down, slow the whole process down, shoot some really beautiful stuff until you're really happy with it, and then you'll have some like amazing portfolio. But I'm sure it is already great. And really just focus on how are people going to discover your work, and once they do, once they're on your website, what is it that they need to see, to learn, understand, to just build the conviction that they should inquire with you. And then what's your process after then for converting a lead? Like, how do you take that initial email query and make sure that they actually book with you? And I think for most photographers, just putting your focus on your business is going to have, I mean, we would always say, I think I said this earlier, is we were okay at photography, And, been in it for a while now. So obviously you get better and better and better the more that you do it. But the thing which really made us successful was just focusing on the business.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that tip. If someone's thinking like, okay, I'm booking a lot locally, like I'm doing stuff within like a couple hours from me, I'm loving that. But man, I want to be the person on Faroe Island. Like I want to be in Europe. I want to be shooting destination. Maybe other than just SEO, what would be your tip for somebody to widening the geographic footprint that they have? Or is there something specific that you're like, oh, you got to do this and not this?
Yeah.
Or any tips that you have around pursuing destination stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. And I preface this by saying, if you want to shoot destination work, you should think about why you want to shoot destination work, because it's not as glamorous as you think it is. And
Amen to that.
I'll tell you what, I just love waking up in my own bed and going to sleep in my own bed, and you can make a whole lot of money shooting in your own city, and then you can go on holiday wherever you want.
And not have to work.
And not have to work. But if you are really determined on the idea of doing destination wedding photography, then you should find a photographer who is in opposite hemisphere to you and build a friendship with them through social media. Make sure that they are at like a similar level to you in terms of like quality of work and style, and befriend them. And then once you've sort of like built this relationship with them, ask them if they would like to come and shoot in your city. So obviously make sure that you choose a place where maybe you would like to go and shoot, because you're going to send them bookings and you're going to make sure that they get an inquiry. So on the dates that you can't shoot, you're going to get them a booking. And then you're going to ask them to return the favor. And they're going to start sending you inquiries for the dates that they're already booked. And it will result in you booking a shoot in that country. And
Brilliant.
it's really simple, and we did it like again and again, and it actually worked really well for us because we had quite a large amount of like inbound inquiries. There was like, I remember there was some dates, and we would have like 80 inquiries for the same January date, which is, some of those dates here in New Zealand, which is our summer, everyone wants to get married on that day. So yeah, we would connect with photographers all over the place and helped loads of people get work down here, and they would do the same for us in other countries, and that's how we got a lot of our international work.
Brilliant. That's so smart.
I wish we could like take a like, hey, you're from this country, listener. You're from this country, listener. Let's just match you up like a dating app.
Maybe that's Narrative's next product is an international
Matchmaking. International destination wedding
matchmaking. Yeah, that's awesome.
That's great.
That's so brilliant. So, what does that look like? I know you said you build the friendship and then you facilitate that ask. Can you give us an example? Because I think the biggest question that people have when they hear that is they go, "Oh, James, that sounds so smart. I really hear the value in that, but I have no idea how to actually word that." What is the ask once you've built that friendship? Or is it a gift?
Well, we would just say, "Do you want to come to New Zealand and shoot a wedding?" It's really simple. And they'd be like,
"It's a gift,
of course
yeah.
I do." And then you help them get that booking. And I mean, unless you've befriended a jerk, they're not going to not return the favor. And like, it's generally what would happen is we would help them get their first booking, and maybe like just coach them a little bit on how to do that. Like, you kind of, if you're shooting your first destination inquiry, you're probably going to struggle to charge the client for your flights and whatnot. And so we would say either add the flights on top of your fee so that it's just kind of included in that, so that people don't feel like they're paying extra because you're not from the country, or just cover the flights yourself and just fly down here and then like come hang out with us, and we'll like show you around and whatnot, and shoot the wedding while you're here, basically.
Yeah. I
I
love
love
that.
that. That's great.
That's so brilliant. I hope everyone
so
listening to the
good.
pod that actually wants to do destination will do
Yeah.
that because that is so smart. So let's shift and talk a little bit about narrative because I think narrative is such a cool product. I love software. I have never built my own software. Actually, we built a pricing calculator for Creative Rise that's software, and I'm really excited and proud of it. But in terms of like big software
Yeah.
stuff, I've always been like, it'd be super cool
Big
to do
tech.
something like that. And you've done it, and you've solved some really cool solutions
Yeah.
for some really cool problems in the form of solutions for the photographer industry. And we've been using it for years. It
Yep.
saves us so much time. Why don't you talk about real quick what are the benefits of narrative as it pertains to growing a business? Because I know one of the immediate objections that a lot of people think about when software comes into the picture, hey, you should try something like narrative or whatever else. If I'm even telling somebody, I was telling somebody this morning at the gym about an accounting software that they should start using, and in his head, I see people start thinking, well, that's like there's a tech learning curve and is it going to be worth it? Talk about what are the advantages of photographers actually learning and spending time and seeing it as a part of their job. Like I need to learn about tech and software because it's going to buy me back so much time or it's going to give me more efficiency. It's going to help me do something I'm not currently doing. And because of that, I'll have more time and energy to go actually build my business, generate leads. What are some examples of like ways that we as photographers and filmmakers and stuff can use products like narrative to do that? Because I think it's so important. And how do you often see the best users that use
Yeah.
narrative building their businesses because of the time saved?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's probably first useful to acknowledge that the concept and idea of AI in the photographer's workflow is not a trend. It's not like I don't know, this might be a sore spot for some people, but like, Bitcoin, where everyone's going to like jump on it and get super excited about it. And then, the
Right.
trend's going to, potentially phase out or who really knows what it's going. It's like,
Yeah, hot and cold.
Yes.
undoubtedly, this is the future of the photographer's workflow. And the sooner that you begin to learn to implement it, the sooner you start to receive the benefits of it, basically. And the benefits, as you outlined, being that it enables you to have more time to focus on the parts of your business that really matter. And in doing so in such a way where it doesn't take away from the sort of like critical creative aspect of you in your photography workflow. And I think this is one of the things that's really important about narrative and the way that we designed both the culling and the selection tool is that they're designed to make sure that you maintain full creative process in it. So it's not doing the selection for you. It's not doing the editing in such a way where you can't continue to like modify and improve it. And so photographers who are really maximizing their usage or just using narrative to maximize their business are saying to us like, I use, the most advanced culling and editing features. I use, scenes view with assessment rank ordering, which helps me find my photos way faster. And I do the whole process in 80% less time than I used to. And so, for me as a person who now works a full-time role in running a business, I still shoot weddings and I can cull a photo shoot of 5,000 images in 30 to 60 minutes and I can edit that whole shoot in that's sometimes the same amount of time as well. And so in the case of me, like that's an incredible win. In the case of a photographer who's, working as a full-time photographer, that means that you've got so many more hours in the day to focus on all those other things that we talked about that are critical to building your business. You can now go out and actually learn how to make good SEO, or you can invest the time in building the relationship with that other photographer, or, you can focus on your website a little bit more or do that styled shoot. And, your biggest limitation is your time and the energy that you have while you're doing that work. And you were saying this earlier, Joey, is like when you're using narrative in your workflow with the analogy of the Tesla, it's like you actually like doing that you like doing the culling and the editing, and that's so critical because when you sit down and you're like chugging through, 5,000 images or however many you shot at that photo shoot, and you're trying to cull and edit them, and you're not feeling very motivated about the process of doing so, you're not going to do your best work. And so if you have something which, and so many of the problems that, if we think about the culling problem is like, you never need to think about if the person has their eyes open or not again. It's such a simple thing.
You don't have to look and scan through everybody in the family photo.
You never need to zoom in again and check and see which photo was more in focus because all the information is right there. And when it comes to editing, it's like you never need to think about, in many cases, getting the white balance correct because it just gets it right. And then it gets you to this base level, which is really similar to, what you have done previously, and it gives you something that you can start to build on. And so what we've seen with users that have implemented narrative edit in their workflow is that you get this initial pre-edit and it's this is close to what I would do, and I would make these minor tweaks which take a fraction of the time. And now I'm going to invest my energy in, using maybe the content aware fill or using masks or whatever it is that I didn't feel like I had enough time and energy to really elevate my my work to the next level.
Yeah.
I love that.
I found it just so cool to use too is when I think about hiring an editor, and which I have done many times, and the cost of communication, especially if you're an introvert. I'm definitely an introvert, but I love people, but I'm the back and forth and the conflict resolution if it's not done right, and it's really expensive. Something that I just feel is so cool is how seamless this is, and it's getting you to that spot where you're it's decreasing the amount of energy I have to put into the back end in so many ways, socially, all these different things. And I don't know, I just love it. I used it when I was a wedding photographer, and then now as a commercial photographer, I find it almost even more useful to me because I'm tending to take massive shoots and having to tailor it down to 30 images or 15 or
It's helping you get
something
even
really
more
low.
selective.
It's getting me very selective in a really quick way. And gosh, I just remember the days of sitting in Lightroom and you're pressing the next key and it just blurry and you're waiting for it to get into focus. And it's just
if you struggle with
that is
things like the load speed and narrative is so fast, which is you guys have done a great job with designing the product in that way.
We were joking before we started recording for the listeners here, and we were no one says I love Lightroom. No one ever says that, but we say all the time, I love narrative.
Yeah.
It's just so cool that right? It's just cool that this I mean, you guys are a big team, but you're also small team, 25 people, right? And so it's just cool what quality comes from a smaller group of people that are just let's make something really awesome.
Yeah.
It's really inspiring.
James, talk to me about AI editing and the ethics conversation around this. I'm sure this is something you guys hear all the time. Before we get even into the AI stuff, so part of obviously what we do at Creative Rise is helping people optimize their businesses, and a massive one with wedding photographers is we've got to find a good solution for increasing how quickly you can edit a wedding. And it's not just because it's frustrating or whatever, it takes forever. It just takes too long for the average person, where it takes away not only all their time, but a lot of their energy, as you were saying, to then go out and build their business, which is really what we're more excited about, right? Is the stuff that leads to income, where editing a wedding is post-sale. You've already made the sale. It's a task that we would describe as post-sale, right? So when we look at that, the conversation we hear a lot of the time is people well, it doesn't feel ethically right. They hired me and they want me to edit everything. And I really empathize with that. I really get that, because I remember thinking the same things, even in the brand world. I remember thinking the same things a long time ago. But as I've overcome that, you've obviously overcome that, hence why you started Narrative. Christy's overcome that. What's the solution to that? Because that's a question that that's an answer we often get back when we talk about
Yeah.
outsourcing editing, let alone
Yeah.
the ethics of actually not just putting it to another person, but putting it to artificial intelligence. So, what's the ethics conversation look like day to day with you, and what's your answer to that?
It's a good question. So the first thing that's really important to understand is that the AI is predicting how the image would be edited based on how you have edited your images. And so it's learning from what you have historically done. And in some ways, it's like the client is booking you because they like the work that you have completed, and it is learning from the work that you have completed and doing a good edit. And so it's interesting to say like, oh, well, like they hired me to do it, not an AI. It's, well, they hired you because they liked the work that you historically did. And this is going to help you create similar work to what you historically did, or potentially even better by building on top of that. I think the other thing that's kind of important to acknowledge here is that technology in photography is always advancing, and these tools enable us to create what we want to achieve with more ease or simplicity or accuracy or whatever it is. And so would you say the same thing about the AI in your camera that automatically focuses on the face in the image? Because before that was in my camera, I had to focus, recompose, like a million times throughout the day. And now I have a camera and I just point it at the subject and it finds the face and it just focuses on them every single time. Like it's the same thing
Great
happening,
point.
but in a different part of your workflow. And there was a thing that you used to do and it took more work. And now you do that thing and it takes less work. And that applies to focusing on the face in the photo, and it applies to editing the image in the way that you would like to edit it.
Absolutely. I also just tell some
So
people
good.
too, I'm like, get off your high horse. It's honestly probably going to be better. Like, it's honestly probably going to assist you to then actually take the time to fine tune, which will then be better end product than
Spend all that time fine
spending all
tuning,
the
as
time
you
being
said, right?
burnt
Doing the
out.
things you typically don't have the energy to do because
Yeah.
you're so exhausted from
Yeah.
the extensive
Yeah.
process of that.
Yeah. What are some, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it won't necessarily be better in the sense that it can't be better than how you've historically edited, but it's really consistent, which is often a way that people don't edit very well. And so a consistent photo shoot is like a critical element to delivering a gallery that looks really nice. Because as soon as people notice like small changes in the colors and the white balance or whatever, then they start questioning like, oh, well, which edit is right? And you don't want your clients to be thinking about that. Yeah.
Exactly. What are
Great point.
some like exciting things that you're just pumped about for 2025, whether it comes to like both your businesses? Like, what's something that you're like, ooh, we're like dreaming up this right now? Like, what's the inside scoop on you, narrative, all the things about for 2025?
Yeah, I mean, we're working on a lot all the time, and we're continuously shipping updates and improvements to the product, both select and edit in 2025. In the short term, actually, are getting really major accuracy improvements, which means that they just continue to get more useful and more accurate at helping you achieve what you're wanting to. And there's like a long list of improvements. We update the product at this stage every 2 weeks with these like updates that just ship in the background, and some of them are small ones and some of them are larger ones. And we've made the process of getting started creating your own personal AI preset with narrative nearly instant. And so all you need to do, there's previously this process of like getting started with an AI editing tool required like selecting all of the different photo shoots that you want to train it from, and it's kind of like a difficult decision-making process. With narrative, now you can just plug your hard drive in and it will scan all of the shoots and it will work out which ones are edited in similar styles and just build your AI preset for you, and then you can start using it automatically. So getting started is basically instant, and it means that, there's tens of thousands of photographers who currently use Select in their workflow, and they're like jumping on to edit and being like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. Why haven't I used this earlier? And it's really exciting.
That's really cool.
That's awesome.
That's so
Well,
cool.
from us to you and the rest of the team at Narrative, thank you, because we love the product, and it does save us a ton of time. One of the last questions here. You've obviously done a lot in the last 10, 11 years, from
Yeah.
building a beautiful, amazing, wedding studio, wedding photography business, and Chasewild has been massively successful, not just in New Zealand, but all over the globe. So with that, and then also looking at your journey to take the huge jump to starting a software company that's going to help creatives really be empowered to use tech to enable them to do a way better job at what they're doing. You've done a lot in the last 10 or 11 years. What's your answer? What's your encouragement to people that are in the beginning of their journey? Maybe when you got back from that trip, or maybe they haven't even gone on that first trip that kind of sets you across the world and really helps you discover your love for taking photos and turning into a career. What's your encouragement for someone who feels like they're at the beginning and they just don't know what the next decade has in front of them? The same way, the last decade for you and for us has been all over the place, and probably nothing like you could have predicted. What's your encouragement for someone who's just getting started, and from the hindsight of someone who's a decade plus in?
It's funny. I was actually just having a conversation with a friend about this yesterday, who was like, yeah, like, I love photography and like I wanted to do it more, but kind of like found it difficult to get to that like next step. And my encouragement to them was, if you pick up your camera and sort of just aimlessly go out and hope that you'll get some nice images, then you probably will just sort of get some nice images. But creating a really clear vision of what you want to create and what you want to do is a really critical part of refining your style and sort of like building that early portfolio. And so I would say, find images that are examples of what you want to create, if that be in obviously video or photo, and build a mood board, and then ask yourself, how do I make this happen, and how do I bring this alive? And then go out with the like vision and direction of trying to create those images yourself, and do that again and again and again and again, and use the images like while you're on the shoot, and look at the back of your camera and go, oh, what did I do that was different to what they did? Oh, it looks like the light was kind of more like this. And it will really help you accelerate kind of the rate at which you improve your photography or your videography in those early stages. And yeah, for me, what that looked like was, every week inviting a friend or finding people who would model for me, and then finding example images of what I wanted to shoot. And then I would send them to them and be like, I want to recreate this, and that would get them on board. And I would go out with like really specific intention of what I want to create. Because when you're in those early stages, I think, it's you look at these images and you're like, oh wow, that's so amazing that kind of just worked for them, but that didn't. Like, that photographer had a very clear idea and vision of what they were trying to achieve, and they planned a lot to make it happen. And you all need to do the same to produce something that's similar. And then once you're at that point, and you can create something that's beautiful, now you can begin to build on it and like push it in your own direction.
Yeah, I love that. What about on the business side?
Right.
What are your thoughts on duplicating that early stages business side?
Encouragement.
Yeah, I guess making sure that you are just giving yourself the time to focus on the business element. And it's interesting, when we jumped on this podcast today, I don't think you realized how much of a focus I believe the importance of building your business is. And we sort of realized that there's this like really strong synergy between how you guys think about building a creative business and how I do. And so and there are so many amazing people that you can learn from who have already done this and are willing to share their knowledge. And obviously you guys are an amazing example of that, where there are people who are just willing to, usually at some cost, but not a lot, sell the breadth of knowledge that they have built over years and years and years of building their businesses. And so I would say make sure you're following people who you really respect, who are not just talking about photography, but are really talking about how to build that business, and do just initially just replicate what it is that they're teaching and do that yourself. And then eventually you'll find things that are more specific or relevant to your region or whatnot. But you don't have to recreate the wheel.
No,
it's already been done. And there are tried and tested methods that you can use and execute on, and just do one thing at a time really well, and do it well. Not I threw a few hours at this and then I moved on to the next thing. Because you only initially need one thing that's working really well for you, and that will
100%,
drive leads and do it really well. And then once that's kind of honing, jump onto the next thing and do that really well. So
that's great advice.
That is some really
Pick
good
something,
advice.
master it, watch it work, and then start duplicating into other areas that it can help.
Thank you so much for all of this, by the way.
Yeah.
This has been such a cool conversation just to hear about so many different things. If people were wanting to, first, where can people find you? Where can they either follow along, whether it's Chasewild or Narrative? And then also, how can people get started with Narrative? If they're dang, I would love to cut out the amount of time that I'm putting into all of this stuff on the back end. How can people get started, and can they start for free, paid versions? What does that look like?
Yeah, so Narrative you can use completely free. There's a version of Narrative which has unlimited projects, unlimited images. And so if you're kind of oh, I'm interested, but I'm not sure, jump on. You can use it for as long as you want, no cost. There's a pro version which gives you some of the more advanced AI features. But as you guys said, you just love things like how fast the images load, and you get all of that kind of stuff on free. You can jump onto our website, which is narrative.so, and just follow the links to download the app, and then you can install it on your computer and start using it for your next photo shoot. If you want to follow Narrative on social, we are at Narrative App, and Chasewild is just at Chasewild Photos. Or if you want to follow along me, I'm at james.broadbent. And you're welcome.
Amazing. We'll link all of that below in the show notes if you want it.
Put it all in the
Jump
description.
on and follow
James, thank you so much, man. This has been great. So great to build more relationship with you, just in hearing all of the wild stuff, especially that flop story. That was so good. So thanks again for that. And dude, thank you just for what you're doing for the community with Narrative. It's really, really cool and helpful for us all. So appreciate your time here, man.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. I love the chat.
That was such a good episode with James. I just think the Faroe Island thing, I'm never gonna
I love his wedding flop. His flop was
the flop was also really good.
So
that whole
good.
episode was awesome.
I love that it was recent too. It's so good.
Okay, so if you stayed to the very end so you could get the Narrative discount code, way to go, you did it.
We got it for you.
The Narrative discount code is 15% off the Narrative Select Pro plan, which is awesome, which is gonna just make your culling 20 times more.
It's actually the same plan we're on. Christy and I are on. Yeah,
same plan we use. It's amazing. And then not only do you get 15% off the pro plan, but you also get 2,000 credits for edit. Now, credits is an image that you get to have the AI process edit for you. So you get 2,000 images for free in edit, which is awesome. So
it's a ton. If you're in the brand space, that's a lot of shots. If you're in the wedding space, that's a full wedding at least.
Yeah, it's gonna be awesome. So
shout out to Narrative. Thanks for hooking it up for the crew. And
so
you guys, if you want that.
If you want to claim that, go to narrative.so/Creative Rise. It'll be linked in the show notes, so you can go down and get it there to get the deal.
Yeah, and this month is getting exciting, guys, for us here at Creative Rise, because it is now getting into almost February, which is crazy that 2025 is almost in February. And one of the best parts about February is we were running our next retreat down in the desert for our Inner Circle crew, which is really exciting. So we're getting pumped up for that. You're going to hear a lot of stories and a lot of things that we're going to be teaching on down at that retreat, surely on the podcast in the coming weeks. And even better, the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks after that is actually the next round of our Masterminds launch. So we're starting on March 16th, but applications go live on March 2nd. If you're wondering, if you're new to the show, new to Creativ, and you're thinking, what is this Mastermind? Well, Christy and I, back in 2019, set out to go, if we could compile everything that's helped us build six-figure businesses into one place and gave people support, accountability, and coaching in order to potentially achieve building a six-figure foundation for their business, what would it look like? Well, we built it. It's called the Six-Figure Creativ Mastermind. Sorry, the 6-week Creativ Mastermind, helping you build a six-figure foundation for your business in just 6 weeks. So everything you're going to need in just 6 weeks. And we've been doing it since 2019 and innovating it and innovating it and innovating it. And round 13 is coming March 16th. We're kicking it off, which is really fun. So March 2nd is when the applications go live. But here's the thing. We only take 35 businesses every time we do it because we got to keep it intimate so that we can control the culture and make sure we can control the results people get, which is a really, really important thing to us. So if you're interested in that, go to creativrouse.com. You'll see all the info on what you might be learning, how it applies to you, how it might be applicable to your business growth this year, and making sure 2025 is going to be a killer year for you. And you can jump on the wait list.
Yeah.
And just for getting on the wait list, it's a free wait list. You're just going to get a bunch of information about the Mastermind, and you're going to get early access, plus a discount and some other stuff. But right now, if you get on the wait list, you're going to get the free course called the Sales Call Formula, 7 steps to getting your next yes on a sales call, which is awesome. So go and watch that right now. Implement that. That can help you start making money and growing your business today, which is really cool. But guys, if you love the episode, share it with a friend. If you know somebody else that needs to hear about the future of AI and photography, make sure you share it with a friend. Our dog is squeaking a toy right now. I don't know if that's distracting to you, but it's distracting to me. Hope you guys are doing great. We'll catch you next week. See ya.